Hi, gang sexy. Welcome to the desert, North Africa. Thought we might play a little SCS, something a little different. So let's go back to some old school SCS. And this was game number 2, it looks like, in the system. And I know they remodeled it or reprinted it, or I don't know. I can't get my hands on the updated version of that. I see some out there, but a little rich in blood for those, so I'll have to pass on that. I got the original one, that'll do just fine. And then, of course, they made the one few years back here. Was it the Desert Rats or something like that? But SCS, what a good old system. You want to play something that's easy to learn and flows pretty good while you're playing, then SCS is just a great system to do it with from Multiman Publishing, or the Gamers, as this one was. So this covers the whole thing from when the Italians start this thing to when Rommel comes on, and I guess right up to the end with El Alamein. So as you can see on yon table, we've got everything set. Well, we've already played a turn, actually. We're into turn 2 now. But, just look at the expanse. It's just all the way from where, just to the east here, where Tripoli, I guess, would be, and then all the way across to Alexandria and Cairo, way over here, up the Nile River there, where the Allies are, this thing starts with the Italians owning Libya, and the Allies are sitting in Egypt here, okay? So the Brits don't start with very much on the board. The Italians are loaded up, and they're going to start literally right there at Fort Capuzzo and Bardia, right on the border there. And, of course, I decided on the first turn, let's go ahead and get after the minor Brit forces, which they surrounded these guys right here in Sidi Barrani, and they sent them to the dead pile. Now, they can be rebuilt with replacements. All right, so let's talk about some concepts for this game. So you'll notice the markers, the supply markers. Got the old OCS feeling there. I mean, those are like some of the early OCS game supply markers. Smart, they used the same thing in both prints. So, interesting thing is you do your movement, you do your barrages and combats and whatever, and then you do your exploitation. Then you check supply. So your units, your supply effect will be on your next turn. So if a unit goes out of supply, you're going to know it on the next turn. And it's interesting how supply, I don't know if I ever played one that does this process. So you have movement points from where the supply dumps are to the units. And it's 5 movement points, like 5 truck, I guess, or something like that, for the axes in the first so many turns. And then it increases a little bit because I guess they stretch their lines farther. But what you do is, using those 5 movement points from a unit back to a dump, you count the number of units. Each is worth 1 point, except for Italian divisions, they cost 3. So you're going to count the number of points as your units back to the dump they're drawing from, and you're going to divide that by 10. Okay? And that number will be the amount of supply points you're going to burn out of the dump using MMP standard rounding rule that they use. If it's below 0.5, you stay down. If it's at 5 or up, you go up to the next one. So in this scenario here, if you had 14 points worth of units drawing from this dump, you would only burn 1 supply point. But if you had 15 or 16 or 17, you would burn 2. And they do allow you to manipulate your count so that you can get a little better percentage on drawing supply. Now, if you had 4 points of units, you still got to burn 1 supply point. There is no 0. Supply. So, maybe make sure you're not down there at less than 5 points so that you don't feel like you're wasting a supply point. At the start of each turn, both forces will go through their initial steps, which are, you've got reinforcements, you've got air power, you've got supply, you've got replacements. They have this thing, it's called variable reinforcements, which are replacements, and it's really simple. There's no breakdown of, you get this many armor replacement steps and this many infantry. It's just steps, and you can use them however you want. You can actually, if you got a unit that's down 3 steps and you're getting 3 steps of variable reinforcements, you could actually build that one unit all the way back up using all 3 steps on them. You don't have to just use 1 per unit, okay? They're going to roll for truck points. Truck points are how you maneuver your supplies around, or even units, all right? And 1 truck point can move 1 unit or 1 supply point. And it can move it with a movement value of 10 movement points. And you're going to use them during your movement phase to either pick up supplies, like maybe you're going to pick up some supplies here in Benghazi, which are sitting in the holding box, which means they're actually in Benghazi, and you're going to move them down that main road, start heading towards the front, okay? Or maybe you're going to pull them up out of Tobruk and move them to the front where the Italians can have better access to those supply dumps, those supplies that they need. And both sides get them, the Germans get them, and the Allies get them. You roll for them on a table, and the table, so as you can see here, the Axis supply table, you roll your dice, and truck table. From turns 1 to 7, they're going to get 3. From turns 8 to 18, they're going to get 5. And from 19 to 28, they're going to get 6. And if you look at the Allies, they're going to get 4 from 1 to 7, 6 from 8 to 19, and 7 from 20 to 28. So they're doing slightly better, of course, than the Axis forces were. All right. The Axis also has, you both get air points. Air points can be used for like artillery doing a barrage, or they can be used to support an attack on the ground by giving it a column shift. Or barrage, each air point is worth 5 barrage points. Barrage table, similar to OCS, only you don't have to worry about counting, taking supply, because that's already determined for you during the supply phase, okay? By the way, if something's out of supply, they're going to have their movement reduced, they're going to have their barrage reduced, they're going to have their combat power reduced, okay? And there's your barrage chart right there, all right? You've also got coastal shipping. Both sides have coastal shipping. The Allies are more or less unlimited. They don't have any problems with coastal shipping. They can move. The Germans have to roll for the Axis have to roll for it. They might get 1, 2, 3, or 4, and those are used to either move one unit or one supply point up and down the coast. To either maybe you moving them from Tripoli to Benghazi, or over to Tobruk, or maybe into Bardia, or maybe Mersa Matruh if they have it. And the Allies work the same way. That's how you move your, other than trucks, that's how you move your supply along, okay? And that gets used up pretty quick with the coastal shipping. I don't really know reason to move units right now. Anybody on this road up here moving from Benghazi across, they're going to move halfway, and on the next turn when they move again, they'll be in the supply range of this place over here. So you really got to think about where to place your supplies, okay? You also get your regular reinforcement chart, which is on the back of the playbook. The Axis also gets multi-suppression table. So you can take some of your air points, which I think on this turn here I assigned 1, and you look on this table here, and they're going to get a +1 die roll modifier to their supply. What they're doing is I guess they're suppressing the air coming in and knocking out their ships, bringing in supplies. +1's not going to do much. Like, I think I rolled a 6, and it's still going to be in the 5 to 8. If 6 becomes a 7, they still only got 3 supply points. So that was like a wasted suppression. For this thing to be effective, I think you've got to burn, which they don't have. They've only got 3. They'll get more air points later. So from turn 8 to 18, they're going to get 5 air points a turn. You burn 4, you're going to get a +5. Maybe burning 3 or 4 to get your supplies up. I'll determine that as the need goes, as supply goes, because Rommel's going to come on with all the German forces, and if you still got all these Italian divisions on the map that need to supply, that's a lot of supply points you're going to end up burning, more than you probably want to. You can just leave units out of supply. The problem is, for so many game turns, any Italian unit that gets left out of supply, they're pretty much eliminated. It's like they didn't get what they needed, and they said, to hell with you, and we're not fighting, and we're gone. I don't know where they went, but they're considered eliminated. 28 turns on the turn chart. All right. This thing does move pretty fast, so don't have to worry too much about that. And like I say, pretty much your typical SCS move. You can do overruns. Then you do your barrages. Then you do combat. If you have assistance from artillery or air, you can add that in for a column shift. And then you do exploitation again. Then the opposing unit goes in. It's always the Axis always go first in this game here. So, let's just see if the Italians, they're already pushing. They're going to go across into Egypt. They're going to push towards Mersa Matruh. They should have enough to take that, but then we got to make sure they get supply out there with them, so we'll have to burn some trucks to move supply forward on this one, which we have 3 truck points to use. And they've got a bunch of troops back here in Tripoli. Oh, by the way, they can move these boxes over here. They come in, any reinforcements come into Tripoli. On one turn, they can move here. And then the next turn, they can, I guess, so to speak, move on to the map. You can also take the truck points, like, let's say you had a supply, you want to move a supply point. You burn a truck point, move them 10 movement points. you could burn another truck point and move him another 10 movement points. The turns are a month long. So, you could probably drive across most of this, I'm sure, in a month. If you're not being shot up by airplanes or long-range reconnaissance, desert group or whatever. So that's how that's going to work. Got to keep the supplies flowing. I don't know how that is going to feel painful or not yet. I'm sure I will as I go to seeing how the supply costs work. But there you go. That's SCS, sort of an intro to SCS Africa. It's been around a long time. I'm sure a lot of y'all have played this, but I haven't seen nobody recently talking about this, probably because they play the newer ones or they play Simonich's 40 or Africa 41 or whatever. But we're going to give this thing a go. Give me something different to play. A little breakout from some of the heavier stuff I've been doing. And let's get after it, and I'll update y'all as soon as I move through a few more turns. All right, sexy. We'll talk to y'all soon.